He carried his followers' disappointments. You see, they thought he was going to be a different sort of king. Heaven knows he had tried. He had tried to etch eternity into the stubborn humanity of those who followed him. But now nearly all of them had abandoned him. Through eyes smarting with grief and narrowed by pain, he looked out to see who will listen to the truth that is revealed in his death. And there is hardly anyone there. Just John, faithful, beloved John. He is still standing. He can also see his mother. She is bent over in grief. Her body shakes with tears. Now and then her eyes reach upwards, searching out his gaze. He looks at her, but for once he cannot tell what she is thinking. Several other women are also there. They seem better equipped to deal with pain than the men, and they comfort each other. They hold him in their gaze, and he is comforted. His gaze holds them in return. They stand under the cross and they find understanding. Perhaps this is the only way. His disciples have gone. The shepherd has been struck and the sheep have scattered. Even Peter, pig-headed, big-hearted, bird-brained Peter. He had seen who Jesus was, but he had still got it wrong, railing against his tough words that the Messiah had to suffer and die. He carried the knowledge that he was to be the fulfillment of all God had longed to do through Israel, that he was the second Adam revealing a new humanity, that he was a second Moses revealing a new covenant. And he shuddered with the memory of all the struggle, the torment and the raging against God that had led to this most scandalous and blasphemous conclusion being the truth, that God was in him, and that his purpose was the purpose of God. And how are you supposed to tell it to others? Stories and riddles and signs seem to be the only way. You couldn't persuade people to believe. You had to wait until the penny dropped, and it was achingly slow. They were only prepared to go so far. They followed him when he was rebuking the religious leaders for their hypocrisy. They followed him when he fed the multitudes. They followed him when he healed the sick. They followed him when it seemed to them he was a conquering leader. They followed him because they believed he was the Messiah. But they stopped following when they found out what a Messiah really is. Then they fled. And Peter himself, who had promised that if everyone else deserted, he would stand firm, he had also crumbled, like a house built on sand. He even denied he had ever known him. And Jesus carried with him the knowledge of that moment, looking into Peter's eyes and seeing the betrayal, and sharing bread with Judas and knowing what he was about to do, and now, almost alone, almost accomplished, wondering, will they ever get it? He had broken bread with them the night before and given them a way of seeing what the bloody horror of this dying meant, but they are not here to see it, not here to make the connections. They wanted a different sort of Messiah. He had confounded them, and now they were embarrassed by him, endangered, and so they had left him. They were somewhere in the shadows, not the shadow of the cross, but the shadow you create yourself when you turn your back on the light. They were nursing their disappointment, complaining about how deceived they had been. This was a terrible thing to carry. The thought of it made him wince and retch. He carried the terrible possibility that it was all in vain, that he could walk at their side forever and never be recognised, never be known, that endless bread would be broken and wine poured out, but uncomprehensively as if it were just food. They would go back to how things were. they would forget. They would airbrush out these crazy years and cling to their pretentious hope of empire and power, and look out for the next Messiah to deliver them a kingdom of their own.